Aloha, I'm Joshua Cooper, and welcome to Cooper Union, what's happening with human rights around our world on ThinkTech Live, broadcasting from our downtown studio in Honolulu, Hawaii, and Moana Nui Kea. Today we'll be looking at uniting people for peace in Ukraine, Tenacious Grassroots NGOs Tactics for Good. The devastating war in Ukraine continues to rage, adding to the body count of more than 8,000 civilians, leaving 17.6 million people needing assistance. Everyday people provide selfless acts of kindness to contribute to a culture of peace in these dire conditions. One of the people who does that is with me here today. Chris Romano, thank you so much for joining. And why did you decide Ukraine was so important?
So I took a trip to Warsaw, Poland back in November, and I was talking to people in Poland, and people in Poland are genuinely frightened. They think, hey, we're next. Putin gets really wild here. He's coming right across that border into Poland. And they were also telling me stories about people in Ukraine and how they're struggling and how they need simple things, cash. They don't have credit cards. They don't have, nobody's writing checks in wartime, right? And they were also saying they need water. So I had this crazy idea. I got 28,000 Ukrainian hryvnia out, and I was going to rent a car, drive to Lviv across the border. I had a whole plan, and I was just going to stand in the middle of Lviv and just hand out money and bottles of water. And which is ironic because later on, somebody from Ukraine said, we have water. That's actually not something we need. I can go to a tap and get water, believe it or not. So, and it didn't work out. I ended up needing an international driving permit, so I couldn't even get the rental car. So I just ended up giving most of the cash back, and I gave a small portion to a friend who clears mines in Ukraine, and he took about 6,000 hryvnia with him to Kyiv and was handing it out and giving it to people and things like that. Just an act of kindness. And when I came home from that trip, I went, can I do something bigger? So I just started collecting donations, not knowing how I was going to get them there. Mm-hmm. And I received about 500 pounds of donations from local people. So I had to put a plan. As these things started pouring in, I had to put a plan in place. So that was the genesis of kind of this crazy idea.
No, that's great. And the truth is, it's great that our sense of solidarity for one another motivated you to just do something. And then, of course, it's also good that probably your professional skill set and what you do regularly got you to sort of think how to do it better. And then you were able to then formulate this idea. And in the end, how many times have you gone and what did you gather and how has it been received so far?
So as I was getting ready to leave, a local news channel here heard about my story. So they came and interviewed me. And originally they asked me about a month earlier, and I didn't want to do an interview if I didn't think I was going to be successful. I wasn't sure. Like I said, I was making it up as I went along. But in the process of making connections, it looked like it was going to work. They came in a few days before I left and interviewed me. And what I decided to do was start packaging it up and getting it ready to go. And I was just going to take it there for myself. I was actually going to bring the items by hand in a rental car and drive them into Lviv myself. I had connected with a refugee family here that put me in touch with a brother of theirs, and he was my guy on the ground. So that's kind of how it started moving forward from there. And just got even crazy. There's a crazy story behind this. I don't know how far we're going to get into it, but it's pretty wild.
Yeah, no. Well, the good news is I have an international driver's license, so next time I can get you a little closer.
Yeah.
When we look at Russia's war against Ukraine and it causing such huge number of casualties and intentional massive damage and destruction to the infrastructure, targeting civilians, it is exciting to see NGOs coming together to offer transformative assistance and continue to serve for a better world. When you decided you were going to do something, it sounds like exactly as it is, like you were building the plane while you're flying it. But the important point is, it's really that sense of compassion and courage and just meeting people and having faith in one another that we're all working towards a common good.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I made so many connections. So you talk about two NGOs, I connected to two different humanitarian organizations. And then I hooked up with people in the Ministry of Social Services. I have an Intel guy that hooked up with me. His mother said, let me put you in touch with this guy. He'll be your lifeline. If you run into problems while you're over there, he'll get somebody to come help you. And so I built like a whole network, and people were just insanely willing to pitch in. Let me give you an example. I had asked for a translator on LinkedIn, and I had 70,000 impressions. I had 400 responses. I had my inbox was filling up for people going, I know a guy. And then I built like this whole virtual network of people just off that LinkedIn story. So I was texting with people all over the world during my travels and everything, and they were checking up on me and offering me assistance.
That's excellent to be able to use social media, but then also to get such a response. We've talked to many people throughout this year, and the individual initiatives and ingenuity that they're really exhibiting shows what's possible even in the worst conditions that humanity could possibly face. Maybe share a bit, what are some of the things that you delivered and how people have been able to appreciate them, and some of the simple things that maybe we take for granted going forward?
Yeah. So what I learned was people were complaining that they didn't feel that ththings were getting into the right hands, that they were going into the system and things weren't being distributed properly. There's always a little bit of, hey, there's corruption, always that's kind of a common theme you hear, especially when you're dealing with Eastern Europe. But they really were feeling like, hey, so my main goal was for me to go there, bring the items and hand deliver them. My friend Andrew in Lviv was going to hook me up with orphanages, clinics. We were going to go out to little villages that were affected by the hostilities, a little bit east of Lviv. I wasn't going to go quite as far as Kyiv or, where the real combat was happening. My daughter would have killed me if I was. But so the idea was for me to put this in people's hands. So I collected winter gear, adults to children. Most of the donations were free. People just gave them to me. But I also went out every time I was in a Walgreens or a CVS, I would buy out their bandages. I went to Amazon and bought 1,000 tablet bottles of ibuprofen and acetaminophen and aspirin. And I was just filling bags and bags of medical supplies. Friend of mine got trauma kits. I had a friend who at the last minute joined me literally days before I was leaving, decided to come with me, and he brought another 200 pounds of gear. So I was just collecting just those things. I got a bag of chocolates that I understand went to an orphanage and those kids loved it. And I had even some toys and things for Andrew's daughter that were given to me from somebody else. Beautiful, like that purple jacket we saw earlier. That was one of my jackets that came out. I was like, wow, this is really, really nice stuff. People gave, by and large, probably half of it was brand new items, still in packages, still having tags on. I also went to eBay and bought hats and gloves and socks, big bags, 100-pack bags of socks and stuff. So just necessities. I mean, I wasn't bringing fancy things over. I wasn't bringing iPods. It wasn't nothing like that. It was things they need.
And so you're just an example of really that a cape is not required to be a human rights hero. And what was it that was the point where you said, I can do something? And then what was the moment where you were able to then see it actually happen? Can you share that you were able to hand it over to people and what a difference it did make?
So here's where it gets to be really interesting. So I knew it was going to start being successful as I was getting ready to fly to Warsaw. My last question was, is United Airlines going to help me with my baggage and defer my baggage fees? They did not. So I paid $1,000 for the six extra bags I carried. Yeah, I just ate. Whatever. I already planned that I was probably going to have to do it, but I called corporate, I called baggage, I called their charity foundation. They all told me I needed to ask on the day I traveled. And on the day I traveled, they said, do you have a letter from United Corporate? And I said, no, they told me to talk to you. So I just paid and went on. When I landed in Warsaw with 2 giant carts of stuff by myself, I'm trying to shuffle. I had got a rental car. I packed it. I had to strap things on the roof because I knew Nate, my friend, was going to meet me there with additional baggage. Where it gets complex is we spent day one, Wednesday, the 28th of December, I believe, sitting at the border. We tried to drive to Lviv, and at the Polish border before we exited, they told us, if this rental car leaves, the rental car company is going to trigger a GPS alert and Interpol will intercept you and arrest you for car theft. I don't even know if that's even true. This was the Polish border guard. My friend could confirm it. We're like, we just got the Interpol threat. Holy cow. So turned around, drove to a different border at Medieka where we could actually cross by foot. I spent the first day trying to walk the items. Like I was going to bring 2 bags and then Nate would bring 2 and we got all 11 of them up there. They rejected that idea. The Poles wouldn't let us do it. I crossed into Ukraine, and on the Ukrainian side, the Ukrainian customs guy said, if you bring me 11 bags, I'm sending you right back to Poland because I don't have enough time to search 11 bags. So we spent the whole day trying to find a train, a bus. I even walked the line a little bit and was asking people, hey, would somebody drive these things across for me? For all they knew it was heroin, but not humanitarian aid. On the end of day one, we were defeated. I was able to give Andrew one bag of gear just for his family. His mother needed some heartburn medicine, and we had some heated blankets and a sleeping bag. I gave them a whole suitcase. I have a picture of him with me and him with his daughter, but I kind of went back defeated, and we were thinking, well, I'm going to have to go back to Warsaw. I'll contact Mariana Budyek, the lady that runs the United Ukraine Now, and see if she has somewhere I can drop it off in Warsaw. Or worst case, I'll find a Red Cross and just say, here you go, get this to Ukraine. What happened was on the way back to Warsaw that night, Andrew calls me and says, 3 Ukrainian women are going to meet you tomorrow morning at the border and help you carry everything across the border. That way we would have 5 people. It would be a couple bags apiece. It wouldn't be me and Nate showing up with 11 bags. So that's what happened. We met them in the morning. And these amazing Ukrainian women, I think at one point they looked at me and said, this sissy American man, because the 60-year-old woman took the biggest bag, threw it on her shoulder, and just started walking up the cobblestone road. And it was just nuts. We hand carried everything across. And when we got to the Ukrainian border, we crossed through Poland into Ukraine, and they stopped us. And if it wasn't for the 19-year-old girl, one of the other girls, translating for me and negotiating on my behalf, I had a letter from the Deputy Minister of Customs. I had another humanitarian organization that took my inventory. I had written a whole inventory line item in Ukrainian and in English. They took my inventory and backed it into a request. So that I had a request asking exactly what I was bringing. So I had kind of some pretty good paperwork. And ultimately they were like, look, you can do this one time, but don't ever do this again. We're going to let you through. And we were all like you just collapsed, like the adrenaline rush of just finally getting a closure. So that's how we finally got it there. Andrew's son met us in a very tiny car. We couldn't put all the gear in the car. So we ended up having to wait for me and Nate were going to go back to our vehicle, get our backpacks, but we ended up spending almost 3 hours in customs. It would have been another 3 hours back. I told Andrew, I said, take some of the money I gave you and hire a car. There was guys standing there in Ukraine just saying, hey, we'll drive you. I said, get one of those guys to take that stuff. It's 22 degrees out and those women are just standing out there freezing. So that's ultimately what we did. So I never made it to Lviv to distribute the gear. So more on that in a second. The crazy thing was these women came from Lviv under that Russian missile attack on December 28th. So I would have been spending the night in Lviv in a Best Western as missiles are coming into town. The women actually got up at 5 a.m, drove 2 hours to the border while their country was under missile attack. No power over 90% of the country. We could hear air raid sirens everywhere, even on our side of where we were close to the Polish border, air raid sirens. So they took risk to come help us bring this gear. And then from there, I handed it off to Andrew. His kids took it up 10 flights of stairs in his building at 10 p.m. at night in the dark, no power. No elevators. And they were laughing about having to carry all this. These kids were like not too thrilled about it, but they got it all up there. And that the pictures I have are all about what happened to it afterwards. And that was basically Andrew did what I told him I wanted to do. My intent was to hand these items to people that need them, to orphans, to parents, to kids that needed these items. And the entire time after I came back to the US, he told me, I'm doing your job. I'm your angel. He was just, he wanted me to know that he was not, stealing from me or taking these items, and he was doing exactly what I wanted. So the entire time all this stuff was going on, people were coming to his apartment. 2 soldiers came to his apartment from Bakhmut, where the heaviest fighting is happening, and picked up items and brought him back to brought him back to the front. And they took mostly the medicine. They were really enthralled with the medicine and bandages and gauze, obviously the things soldiers would really want. They actually asked me for cold medicine before I left, but I didn't have enough time to buy a bunch of it. So that's the medium length version of that story.
No, I appreciate that. And it really seems like you have a lot of life lessons during that point. First and foremost was never quit and being tenacious, because if you know you're doing something that's necessary and is needed in this world, it's important to do that. And maybe you could share a little bit too about bringing comfort to people in hardship during war, knowing that this is what we all need to be doing to make sure that that's that spirit of San Francisco when the UN Charter was created, that if anyone has human rights harms happening to them, we're all being impacted. And if we
Right.
don't take some action today, eventually it'll hit us, but that's not why we should do it. We should do it because no one should ever feel such human rights violations.
Exactly. And, when I met Andrew's daughter that day, when he brought her to the border that day and I met her, and I just fell in love with Ukrainian people. I'm like, these children are suffering. You forget about the kids. You almost kind of forget about that stuff. But these children aren't just suffering. Their parents are being killed and they're being orphaned literally real time. You know what I mean? Andrew's son is a 17-year-old. I met him too. As a matter of fact, we get ready to PayPal him $100 for his birthday. Taras, I guess he's probably 16 or 17. He's going to be fighting in this war very soon. The reason the women came across the border is because men are legally not allowed to leave Ukraine. So that's why they sent women, right? They won't let the men leave the country. So they're all potentially candidates. So, I'm an ex-soldier. I'm an 82nd Airborne paratrooper from the 1980s. So, I understand war and I understand the effects of war, but now I'm kind of seeing it from the civilian side. He sent me text messages today. I would show them to you guys where he's asking me, pleading, when does America think this war is going to end? What are you guys thinking over there? What's going on? Anytime I hear about, tanks landing in Poland and soldiers being trained on tanks, or the fact that we're thinking about sending combat aircraft, I send him these little messages of hope to kind of let him know, because that really ultimately the toll is the human impact to these people. It's really, really terrible what's happening over there and what they're seeing.
And as you described, I remember a similar situation during the Yugoslavia crisis and people asking for help and assistance. And the interesting part is sometimes when you watch the news, you feel sort of numb or feel I can't do anything. But once you take the smallest step and begin doing some action, you realize it's limitless what we can all do, and that we can all contribute in some way to ease a bit of the pain, or also even just be there for one another, because no one should ever have to experience war and those humanitarian law violations that we see.
Oh, it's just crazy. Let me read you the message he sent me today. He says, Chris, he translates everything to English for me, and I in turn translate everything I send in Ukrainian. Chris, how are things in America? What do they say about Ukraine? Will the war ever end? Can you believe? We are so tired of it. Friends and acquaintances returning dead. It's terrible to see. I never thought, I'm almost tearing up reading this. I never thought it would happen in our country. But at the same time, he's like, every other message is a message of hope. We will not give up. We will not stop. But look at the gifts he gave me. He gave me this little thing, this little club. And I said, I want to hit a Russian soldier in the head with this. Can you please arrange that for me? Then he gave me this beautiful Ukrainian flag. He's just the sweetest. I don't know how we met, but this process brought us together. And I'm like, this guy's like a kindred spirit for me. He's unbelievable. I gave him an 82nd Airborne coin as a gift, for being my soldier on the ground, if you will, and all that stuff.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that message there, I think it's what people feel in an hour, in a moment. It's because everybody was hoping on February 24th, 1 year ago, it wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
But then when it did happen, it is amazing, the switch. The Ukrainian people love their culture. I've been there many times before the conflict. Been there during the Crimean conflict as well. But they just promised that they wouldn't allow the extinguishment of their beliefs. And that in many ways, they're standing up and taking actions and sort of reminding us what many of us have forgotten, in the sense of what human rights really are, what democracy is. If we do not get out there and exercise more and do what we believe in, we realize the fragility of freedom. And
Absolutely.
that we can't take everything for granted. And that might be some of the insights that you could share as well, especially when you're on the ground more. You see it and it gives you a greater sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm literally reevaluating my life. I did this mission partially because my company shuts down for a week at Christmas time. And I said, what am I going to do with this week? So that was the week I decided to go. That's when I really realized I had a week to do nothing, that's when I really went, this is happening. I was thinking of shipping this stuff at one point, but I was like, no, I really want to be on the ground and give this stuff out. So that's ultimately what made me go. And now I'm thinking, I got the friend who does the mine clearing. I've got a friend who does, sex trafficking they go on missions to, help rescue kids from child sex trafficking and all these things, where I'm thinking, do I do something with this? Maybe I just quit my corporate job, go live in a smaller place, change my life a little bit. I'm 58. I got 20 years left, man. What am I going to do with that last 20? Something really valuable and impactful? Or am I going to, this process has changed my mindset from going through this whole experience. I ultimately don't know what I'm going to do. I may very well do this again next Christmas. Maybe I'll be a little bit more thought out. Yeah, it really makes you think when you experience it firsthand about, what else can I do? And I know I've influenced a lot of other people at my company. I work for Dell Technologies, and they've had me on phone calls, leadership calls, telling my story and things like that. So people to be honest, I was less impressed with it than until other people started pointing it out and going, what you did was actually really insane and amazing and potentially dangerous. And I was like, yeah, I just wanted to do something, like that old adage, giving is better than receiving. I've always believed that in my heart. I love helping people. You lose your job, give me your resume. I'll hunt down the job for you.
I think in a way, it's the For Christmas movie. You're sort of doing the Vince Vaughn character, where instead of teaching language in Burma or, helping things out, it was great. So you have a week off, and then what to do with that week, and then developing somewhat of a plan and then implementing it, I think shows really what is possible as we all look at what we can do, and you see the rays of sun shining in now. And I think they're shining on us both. But going forward, you said, you're thinking about what to do with the last 20. I think what's exciting is you could then see it's Ukraine today, it might be somewhere else, but you're recognizing that invisible line, that link between all of humanity in the work that you're doing. And you're seeing what's possible when we do reach out and extend a hand to assist everyone.
Right. And I really think that personal touch, my idea at the initial about just handing this stuff right to people, giving it to people that need them, is really key for me. That's, I don't want to be involved in an organization where I'm collecting piles of stuff and it goes into a bin and gets shipped somewhere and shows up. I want to be on the ground helping people in whatever way I can. I don't know what that's going to look like or how I'm going to, tackle that next. But I am going back in April. I'm going back, actually bought a flak vest this time. Since missiles were landing last time. I'm going to see Andrew. He wants me badly to see his city. And I'm going to depart here probably on a Wednesday or Thursday, spend a Friday through a Monday in Lviv. And he's going to take me to the sites and places where he delivered items. And I'm going to bring a small contingent of 3 or 4 bags. I'm not going to quite bring, what I brought last time, but I'm going to, just take the train in from Warsaw to Lviv and spend a few days there with the people and really just relish in sort of like their bravery and Andrew, God bless him, man. This guy is just something else. I really love this guy now.
The best thing is Andrew sort of epitomizes the everyday person in Ukraine who realized that their country needs him.
He goes to work every day. He has to go outside the city a little bit to go to work. So he worries while he's at work that his family's downtown. It's just, yeah. So he is the epitome of everything Ukrainian and, the everyman, if you will. So the funny story though is that my friend who went with me, just to give you a little funny story, he ended up sending me a message. I flew to Dublin from Warsaw when I left, and he ended up giving me a message. He sends me 3 positive COVID tests. The dude and I were in a car for 2.5 days sharing chips and snacks, and he had he told me it was bronchitis, and he was really sick. And I'm like, I'm gonna kill you. But I took a test. I've taken many tests since then. I never was positive, but he had full-blown COVID in a car with me for 2 days in Ukraine. I was like, oh my, in Poland and Ukraine. So
sounds like it could turn into a Nicolas Cage film at any moment.
There was definitely some funny asides in this whole thing that I can tell you guys about. How I almost fell into hypothermia and died at one point. I wore a very light jacket and a t-shirt, and that's all I wore in like basically 20 to 30 degree weather, and was drenching with sweat after we delivered everything. And at one point I was starting to get a little bit loopy and uncontrollable shivering. And I'm like, hey, I may fake like I'm passing out just so they'll bring me in that building. The border control hadn't opened up yet. So yeah, it was some wild stuff happening.
Well, I'm glad the adventures have so far been positive, and most importantly, been able to provide assistance for many people. Give us an idea of April how do you see what do you think is needed most right now in Ukraine with the war entering its second year? What do you hope to bring there? And what could other people do to assist that you've seen emerging on how people can be part of the solution?
So there's a website called Meese that will deliver things to Ukraine for you. And there are ways to find people in Ukraine that, there's enough refugees here where they can say, I still have family over there. So Meest, MEEST, will allow you to ship at a cost. I'm sure it's probably not cheap, but you can do some of your own, groundbreaking stuff. I've got Andrew providing me a list. I'm definitely bringing the medicine again. I'm bringing the co-bandages and gauze and tape and all that stuff. I'm definitely bringing the, acetaminophen, and I'm going to bring some cold medicine, even though we're kind of coming out of the cold time. And whatever else I can get in 4 bags, to be honest. A lot of it's going to be medical stuff, though, because that stuff was really well received. They love the trauma kits. My friend Nate bought all these trauma kits over, and there was another doctor that he knew that just ate those up. He was like, give those to me, please, No,
I think we definitely need to realize that every day, people are being shelled. Their innocent civilians are being attacked. And we can do something to reach out and provide some light, but also express that love for humanity through those actions. And so it's great that you're bringing those items. It's great to see what else is possible. And then we have to see how we can, each individual doing some small acts, recognizing the spirit of solidarity, but also more importantly, what's possible going forward and what's needed, especially going into the springtime, and how we have to look at that.
Yeah, and I'll be, as you as a conduit, I'll be happy to give you any other information you want, to help provide to people. But make a connection, find somebody over there, create a friendship, create a bond, help somebody out. I think it's not actually, that part's probably not that hard.
No, it's great. It's each one teach one, each one meet one in a way. I was in Vancouver this weekend for the anniversary, and 2 people in the hotel and 3 people on the street were all from Ukraine. And I have to admit, throughout the year, I've met people in Geneva who have fled. I've met people in New York.
I didn't know there were so many Ukrainian people all over the place. I run into them all the time now. It's great. One of the ladies in my building, I just offered her a Ukrainian T-shirt, and she goes, I think I've got enough Ukrainian T-shirts.
Oh, the good news is maybe we can learn from Ukraine that this is then the war that everybody commits to make sure if it happens to anyone else, anywhere else in the world, that we can all do something to make a difference.
It feels different like that. It really does. Bar the politics, ignore that. It really feels different in that respect. It feels like people are more galvanized around it than ever, this particular issue than ever.
Well, that's good. I look forward to reaching the day where it doesn't matter where we're born, to depend on how we get to live, and that we're able to actualize the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in its 75th year, and that everyone reaches out and helps when they can, how they can, to make sure that everybody's life is a little bit better.
That would be great, wouldn't it? Maybe this next generation will nail that.
That sounds good. Well, thank you for all you're doing, and be safe in April, and look forward to connect afterwards as well. Aloha.
All right. Mahalo, my Hawaiian friends.
Thank you so much for watching ThinkTech Hawaii. If you like what we do, please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.